Let me welcome the attendees, the participants to this program. We are having some problems at this time, but I am Chris Underhill, and I'm the moderator for this session, and you are most welcome to join us. Please be patient with us as some of our presenters are still trying to get on to the actual program. I'm going to very briefly outline who our presenters are, and as they come on board, then you will see them. So we hope to have Peter Yarrow, who's the Executive Director of Basic Needs in Ghana. We have Enoch Lee, who is from China, and she is the founder and CEO of Therapy in China. That is mental health and the workplace. We have Victor Juarez, who is with us now and is the founder of Tu Consejería, and he'll be talking to us in a minute. And we have Daniel Lobo, who is the gentleman who is looking a little concerned on the screen at the moment. And he is the founder and CEO of Because You, based, as I say, in India. I think we'll make a start, even though we are still having problems in getting people on board. And so, Victor, let me ask you the first question that I had. And in fact, if we just remain two people, we're going to have a lovely conversation, aren't we, when I think about it?
That is true, Chris.
Yeah. But so, Victor, just tell me a little bit about the model that you work with. This is, of course, a program about social entrepreneurs bridging the gap between need and access. And so I thought it would be helpful if we first of all explored the model that you work with. Give me a few minutes. If we find that none of the speakers come on board, then I'm going to give you a few more minutes. But at the moment, that's where we are. Okay.
No, we have Enoch now here with us.
Yeah. Don't worry, I'll handle that
here.
part.
Can you hear me?
So Enoch, we are now live, and so we can hear you, and we are live. Can you hear us? Victor, why don't you make a start if you don't mind?
Yeah, of course. In the moment, when Enoch is able to come back and Daniel, who's just joined us, I can start by saying that our model in Guatemala, we have been working here for almost 3 years, and the whole idea and our mission has been to bring mental health to underserved communities, not only in Guatemala, although we started here, but we're expanding to offer it in Mexico and with our same Hispanic population in the US. So really our model is trying or eliminate every barrier that is there for underserved communities to have access to our service like ours. We have a crisis support chat that has been allowing us to get to this population, eliminating the connectivity part and especially the stigma part because of the confidentiality of a chat. And then we offer the therapy based on audio and video, like regular services, but way more affordable and designed to these communities. So that's what we have been doing, Chris.
Great. Thank you so much, Victor. That's absolutely wonderful as a start. I wanted to ask you, Enoch, whether you'd be kind enough just to give a brief description of your model and how you work, in other words. And incidentally, whilst you were trying to get on, I have introduced who you are, so people have a basic knowledge about who you are. Enoch, did you hear?
Huh.
I'm sorry, Victor. Enoch, did you hear me?
Enoch, can you hear Chris?
No, I can't. Would you be able to repeat his question for me?
Yes, if you can invite her, that would be great, Victor.
Yes, it's a small introduction about yourself and the model that you work in with your company. It was basically what I just said, so you can go on, Enoch.
Okay, sure. Thank you. Thanks, Victor. Sorry, I can't hear you, Chris, and hello to everyone. So I'm based in China, in Beijing, and I run a social enterprise focused on mental health in the workplace. And the way we work is bringing in organizational psychology and systemic change management to organizations so that we're changing all the support structures and policies in an organization to support employee well-being in addition to the psychosocial education we give to executives. And in the model, what we also do is we then, whilst working with the executives and companies, the private sector, that's our revenue generating model. And then the revenue and the profit that we generate is given back to the community in the pro bono work that we do in China to raise awareness on mental health. Particularly, I think our sector, we focus on adults and working adults. And sometimes it extends to also relationships and parents as well, to understand how to talk about mental health for the kids, for example.
Great. Victor, could you thank Enoch on my behalf if you can't hear me?
Yes, of course. Chris says that thank you very much, Enoch. This is going to be a fun interview.
No, this is this is going to be, we're going to make this happen.
Yes, yes, we are going to make this happen, Enoch. That's what Chris is saying.
Yes.
So my next question would
I
be...
will actually just pop out for a minute, see if I come back in, I can hear Chris and let you and Chris have a conversation first. Sorry, you're the only one left.
Okay. Enoch's braver than me. I wouldn't want to go out and come back in again.
Yes, she's brave.
So Victor, while we're waiting, I think the next question that I have in my mind really is obviously you are focusing on a particular community, we could say. It's a broad community, but at the end of the day, you're interested in young people and youth. That is obviously that's what I mean by your community. How do you set about? It's an innocent question in one way, but it goes to the heart of what you do, I suspect. How do you set about finding them, locating them, and then once you have found them, how do you set about making sure they stay with you?
Yeah, of course, and it's not an innocent question at all. I think that's one of the biggest challenge of any company, I think, on finding a client and retain them. Yes. I think that what we do, and probably what it has allowed us to retain our users, is that we have a specific message around fighting stigma, and we created this service specifically for these underserved communities, so they know that they can trust us. Of course, it's a slow process. It's not about an immediate trusting moment, but they have to be aware of us being around them, being available whenever they feel like they need a support. And that's really what has been allowing us to grow. It took time, of course, and it keeps taking time whenever we have a new user. So the message has been always trying to make sure that they know that they can count with us. And I think that's what has helped us a lot. And of course, finding the greatest and the best allies in the region. Because if you start working with an organization that already has the credibility, that helps us a lot. And we sharing that mission of bringing this mental health support is what probably has allowed us to do all what we do. And as you mentioned, is even though it's in a specific type of audience, and as you mentioned, it's really big, we have been able to support different types of small audiences between the big one. For example, women survivors of violence, specifically with youth with suicidal ideation, and other audiences that are inside this big Hispanic audience, which is a broad term that has been ready, I guess, after what we have been living in as a society because of the virus the last 2 years. They finally are ready to find support. But when they look out, there are not many options if they don't have the resources. And that's the niche we're filling up, which is a big one, I think. And that's how we're doing it.
It is a big niche, isn't it?
Yes.
And of course, what's implicit in your modeling is the ability to locate subsectors or subsectors of the community, which may be more difficult to locate for whatever reason.
Yes, definitely. And sometimes the sectors locate us. That's what really happened with women survivors of violence. We were not a service for them, but they looked for us. And luckily, we learned and created specific protocols. And now we can proudly say that we are supporting a big amount of women survivors of violence.
Right. And do you find that that the connectivity between you and your client group is always online, always offline? Is it hybrid? How does that work?
It's definitely online. Everything that we do is remote. So, and every support that we do is synchronic. Everything is in live processes. We learn that as well, and being able to offer a human-based service all the time. Not that we're not against artificial intelligence, but we have found that we create trust by doing this with our audience.
Right. Peter, can you hear me? Peter, can you hear me? Victor, can you ask Peter if he can hear you?
Peter, can you hear Chris? Hi, Peter. Nice to meet you.
Hello. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, but and Chris can hear you, but I'm not sure if you can hear Chris.
Yes.
No, I can only hear your voice, but I've not heard that of Chris, and I can't see him either.
Okay, that's really weird. Anyway, so Victor, I'm going to lean on your good wishes or your goodwill to
How are you, Victor?
To welcome Peter on my behalf, and then
yes,
ask him to make a little introduction of himself and his model, the model that he uses.
Peter, I can hear Chris, Peter. So I was listening to what he's saying, and we want you to introduce yourself and your business model, so we can catch up with the time and you can have some time to explain what you do.
Thank you very much. Our model is one that is addressing the mental health, human rights, and livelihoods of people, as well as influencing inclusive policies. It's a unique model for mental health and development that is user-centered, participatory, community-driven, to promote access to mental health care services, provide a means to a secure livelihood, sensitize the general public to reduce stigma, and influence policies for inclusion and participation. And we've been doing this in Ghana for the past 20 years now, supporting over 180,000 people directly from several communities in 155 districts.
That's great.
That's great, Peter. I'm going to keep repeating what Chris is going to be asking you. So since you can hear me, I'll do that for him, so you have more time to explain what you do, Peter. So Chris, I don't know if you want me to say something to Peter.
Thank you very much.
I can hear Chris, but I can see him writing. Thank you, Chris. Hello, how are you?
You can hear him. Awesome.
He can see me. He can see me writing. I think that is what he said. So Victor, do ask him the second part of the question I asked you, which is how does he access his clientele? How does he access the clients that he's working with?
So Peter, the question is, how do you access your audience? How do you find your users or clients?
Right.
Thank you very much. Because we are community-based and user-led, we actually maximize a lot of community networks, community gatekeepers, community leaders, both traditional and religious leaders, and government authorities at the local levels who we go through and actively engage and participate. And through them, we reach out to families and start our work with sitting down with individuals, groups of individuals with mental health conditions and their primary caregivers and families, and other agencies that are working in the communities, be they governmental or non-governmental, to have a conversation with people living with mental health conditions, to tell us their experience and what their world as people with mental health conditions are. And from there, we are able to gauge what their living conditions are, their present situation is, what their aspirations are, and how else they think the support with their own effort can help them scale through the challenges of lives. And it is true that we get our beneficiaries. It's an extensive consultation process that allows us to get first-hand information about what the world of people with mental health conditions are like in their families and communities, and how our support could help them address issues of their need for treatment services and social acceptance, their ability to be productive and earn an income, to benefit from family and community care and support, and for public policies and programs to be inclusive and allow them to participate actively in decision-making processes and income earning and other economic activities.
Thank you very much, Peter. I presume you still cannot hear me. Can you hear me now, Daniel? Daniel, can you hear me?
Enoch can hear us, Chris, and I was typing to her if she would like to explain how the same question that we did to Peter on how she finds her audience or her users. I don't know if Enoch, you can still hear us. I guess not.
Okay,
Daniel, can you hear us?
So Victor, interestingly, we have Daniel who can hear you and Peter, but not me, which is rather irritating. So if you, Victor, would ask Daniel to explain his model, that would be really good.
But I'm not sure. Daniel, do you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you, but I can't hear everyone else. So I don't want to interrupt anyone.
Okay, so now that at least you can hear us, Chris' question, and we can sum it up in two different ones, is for you to introduce yourself, for you to introduce your business model, and also the second question was, how do you find your users' clients? So let's take advantage of the time that we have with you right now.
Awesome. So I'm Daniel. I'm from Bombay. I work at the intersection of mental health, consciousness, and leadership. I truly believe that working on mental health will unlock consciousness, better leadership in the world. And our business model is a for-profit social enterprise. So we believe that profit and purpose can go side by side. Our clients are all over the world because we are truly online, even though currently I can't seem to hear Chris or see any of you. So that's quite ironic. But we took advantage, or rather the pandemic kind of inadvertently gave us advantage of being an online business model. So we're just trying to figure out how that works. So we have people from all over the world, including organizations and individuals.
Awesome. Chris, did you hear me?
Yes, that would be good. Thank you very much, Victor, and do thank Daniel on my behalf. We are doing well, and we at least have an introduction from each of you now. And Enoch, I don't think, is with us at the moment.
She is, but she wasn't able. She can hear us, but wasn't able to. We couldn't hear her.
No, that's correct. Okay, right. So I think the next question I would like to ask through you, Victor, is really about challenges. What are the challenges that are facing yourself, of course, and what are the challenges that are facing Peter and Enoch and Daniel, if they are able to come on, as social entrepreneurs, as you struggle to bridge the gap, as it were, between need and action?
Well, I'm going to answer the question that Chris was asking us is the challenges that we're facing right now. So I'm not sure, Enoch, Peter, if you couldn't hear Chris, that's the question. And Daniel, I don't know if you now heard the question from Chris about what are the challenges that we are facing right now. So I'll go first just to make sure that I'm going to be quick. But in our case, our biggest challenge, and probably is with the same case with you, is a stigma in a way. And the other is to find of course, to be able to grow at the same pace that our demand is happening, at least in this region. And because of the pandemic, we have had a lot of demand, but not all of them can afford a service, and different economic challenges as well. But we are in the process of growing. So I don't know who wants to go next, Daniel, Peter, or Enoch, if you heard the question on the challenges that we are facing right now.
I should make a choice.
Yeah, thank you. For me, our key challenge is about political commitment. We think that improvements in mental health, investments in mental health require a concerted, intentional political support for it. Unfortunately, this is not being gained, particularly by government at the higher levels, that is at the national level. And perhaps I may agree with you, Victor, that this is partly because of the social stigma associated with mental illness that is making people in the corridors of power not recognize that mental health is an area that they should put resources into, especially if you have authorities who feel that mental health is self-inflicted, or it's as a result of some mystical infliction, then you are not likely to get the support. And unfortunately, that is what the case is in our parts of the world where there is so much negative social and cultural attitudes towards mental health conditions and people living with mental illness. So our greatest challenge is to get clear political leadership and support that is addressing mental health as a priority area, both as a health right and a development cause that any society and economy should be focusing on. So I would say the combination of getting political commitment or support and reducing stigma and discrimination associated with mental illness.
Thank you, Peter. Can you hear me now?
I can, Chris, and so gladly to hear your voice. Hello.
Great. Lovely to see you too. Thank you.
Thank you, Victor, for relaying the questions.
So, Enoch, would you like to come back in with a description of your challenges, if you don't mind?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes, Enoch. I don't know if
great.
You hear Chris?
Yeah.
Yes,
Can you hear
yes,
me
I
now?
heard Chris.
Okay, perfect. So
Yeah.
go for it.
Oh, great. So thank you. Sorry, there's been a bit of time lag. I think the challenges we face are twofold. One, internally, in terms of the organization, we really need more financial resources in order to expand our scale to, I think, a little bit relating to what Victor was saying, to meet the demand, because many more companies now are really thinking about mental health in the workplace in a more systemic way instead of just one workshop a year. So we are looking for more people, and that's the related challenge as well. How do we find the people who understand not just mental health, but understand organizations and corporates and are able to speak that language and translate some of the mental health knowledge into the language where busy executives can understand? So that's more the internal challenge. The external challenge, I think similarly to some of our other colleagues here, is also dealing with some of the stigmatization of the topic. And I think also not just stigmatization, but misunderstandings of the topic. For example, when we ask some of the respondents in some of our local research that we have done what they think of when they hear mental health, then they say, we think it's to be happy and positive and energetic all the time, which we all know mental health encompasses a lot more than that. So sometimes it feels actually to change those misunderstandings or to expand the knowledge is actually much harder than the taboo around the topic in that way. So I'd say both internal and external challenges there.
Absolutely. Yeah, I can see that.
And if I can add,
Yes,
from
come
an
in, Daniel.
internal lens, I think what we're trying to do at Because You is really show the world that irrespective of you can hear me, right?
Yes, go ahead, Daniel.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I can't hear anyone, so I'm just guessing that you can hear me. Just message me if you can't.
Go for it.
Yeah.
Irrespective of a mental health issue or in any sort of emotion.
Bless
Keep
you.
going, Daniel.
Okay, keep going. All right, it is a roller coaster of a panel discussion. Pretty much like anyone who deals with emotional distress, right? I think when you go through a severe mental health issue or any sort of emotional distress, I think you kind of lose sight of yourself. And I think for me, that is the biggest challenge that I faced. So in April of 2015, I was lying in bed, not able to get out of bed, severely depressed. And today I'm kind of firefighting without hearing anyone else how to do this, right? So and I think that when this happens, we lose sense of identity, and unfortunately, that's what's happening in the world. So what I'm trying to do, or what we are trying to do at Because You, is say, you know what, there is hope, there is a way forward, and let's do it together. So that's I think the biggest challenge for me, just that it just covers your entire identity, and we're trying to kind of open it up a little bit.
Fascinating. So what Daniel has brought in here, and others have made reference to it, is also the personal demand on a social entrepreneur, as much as the environmental demands, as it were. I wondered whether that was also a situation that you found, Victor, as you have been running your organization for some time now.
Yeah, of course. The pressure on us is always big. Daniel, Chris's question was around the demand on us, how we go and how can we keep going after. As you mentioned, Daniel, in your case, what you suffer, and the pressure on ourselves is big always. But I think that in my case, what keeps me going and motivates me every day is our mission on helping other people. Because even though there's a lot of pressure on us, I'm aware of the privileges I have here in this region and in my country. And of course, that makes me want to do something and use those privileges to help more people. And that's how I navigate those moments where you feel like the changes or the problems are too big to be changed, but there's always a way. So that's in my...
Absolutely. Yeah. Just doing a quick sound check. Daniel, can you hear me?
No, I don't think he can hear you.
No, I don't think so. Enoch, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Great. And Peter, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Great. And Victor, could you just check whether Daniel can hear you?
He says that he cannot hear us.
Okay,
You can hear me, Daniel?
No.
Okay, the question that can ask. Right?
Say it again.
Is that the question? Victor, give me a heads up if I just can go ahead.
Yes.
Okay, great. So I think for us, we are trying to build a business, an NGO. We're trying to make a difference in the world. We have this massive drive to do that because we see the kind of the chaos that's out there, and we know that we can do something. And at the same time, it takes an immense amount of energy just to keep getting up every single day, right? Because it's not easy, especially in this field, which is extremely underfunded, where there's massive stigma, where there's so much of there's so much misinformation about what is a mental health issue. So it's just sort of comes at you all the time. So it just feels like, like what is it that really gets you out of bed? I think it's the hope. It's the hope that there are so many of us who are doing so many incredible things all over the world, and that between us, we've kind of have answered some of these questions or myths or things that people throw at us. So I think that's kind of the pressure I face or we face.
Thank you. Victor, can you thank Daniel, or at least let us see whether that happens?
Yes,
please.
thank you, Daniel.
So last question before we invite those who are viewing this presentation to write questions into the chat. We're getting towards the end of the presenter part of the panel. So one last question. How do you finance your work? I ask this question because I am aware that there are a number of financial models present in this group of people. And I think it would be interesting to know. Enoch, why don't you start?
Sure. When I started, I think because I did not start thinking I will become an entrepreneur and I will start a business. So it was a lot of trial and error. And in the beginning was a lot of investment of my own time and money. Because I remember I almost got to a point where I said to the companies, I will pay you to let me come in and speak to your employees. But thankfully, they didn't say that. So in the beginning was a lot of my own investment, my own money. I did a budget about, if we don't make any money, how long can I support ourselves for using a chunk of money I set aside. When I decided to make this a business because we were starting to get more response and inquiries, then we started to get funded by the revenue we generate and the income we generate through the deals that we do with clients. And the way we distribute it is when I quote a fee to the client, I make sure it covers the cost for our facilitators, and I make sure it covers the cost for our client management team. So at the moment, we don't have any full-time employees, actually. So everybody who works with us are on a contractor basis. And the client management team works with commissions, and the facilitators are paid per project as they do. So as long as the cost is covered, then the premium that the company adds onto it, whatever we can make out of that, that goes into the operating cost of the company. So we are essentially income generated by clients as much as we can, and then slowly, hopefully, that becomes sustainable over the future, which I think it's also why I said finances it's a difficulty here, because if we had a chunk of capital injection, for example, then we may be able to expand the organization much quicker than now.
That's great. Thank you. Well, you may find that you find an investor listening at this moment. You don't know. Fingers crossed. Victor, would you like to tell us a little bit about your financial model?
Yes, of course. As in many ways, as probably all of us have, we have struggled on how to start and how we started it, and it was all self-financed. Each of the month, or after a few months, we're starting to be more. We're starting to have more revenue with our users. We evolved from a B2C model to a B2B model, and now we use both, and so we work with organizations, and that's how we're now able to have more revenue, but we're still struggling some months on how can we do more, because even though we have a lot of demand, many of them cannot afford what we do, so we have to find a way of giving the service to the organization. So there's always going to be challenges around the financial model, I think, but it's just a matter of being able to be closer to them, and that's something that we are also working a lot on and also, of course, finding organizations that can help us giving this service to the underserved or closer to the base of the pyramid.
Thank you very much. Peter,
Yes.
how do you finance your model? How do you finance your work?
Our work is mainly financed from institutional donors and charity institutions, trusts, and foundations that provide support for charitable causes. For a very long time, based on the origins of basic needs, It's been mainly funded from the UK, particularly the government and people of the United Kingdom through UK Aid and other agencies such as Comic Relief, the Lottery Fund, and several trusts and foundations, including the JC Overseas Aid Commission and others. Over time, we get a few consultancy services, but those are far and between. They are very, very minimal. But a large chunk of our funding are from institutional donors that publish calls for proposals that we apply as individual organizations or in partnership or as a consortium of part organizations applying for the grant.
Thank you very much. Again, a different model of funding, which is so interesting, don't you think?
And
so,
for us at Because You, we are we charge for our programs from day one. So we've been around for a year and a half. So we're very young in the system. So we started with individual programs online, and because basically our aim is to get access to as many people as possible. But we knew that to get access to many, we need to start somewhere. And people who can pay right now, pay. So from day one, we've had about, say, 70, 80 people who go through intensive programs, kind of 5-week programs. We've had about 500 people who have gone through different types of workshops, one-off workshops. We've had about 3 or 4 different organizations who have employed us as consultants. Out of that, our aim is to work long-term with employees, with employers. So really looking to get sort of multi-year contracts with organizations is our goal.
Great, that's great. Victor, did Enoch disappear just then?
I think so. I cannot see Enoch, but maybe she can hear us. If not, well, she's gonna be back, I'm sure.
So listen, we are getting to the end of our panel time. We had 1640 British Summer Time was the time when we would be ending, and we are now just a couple of minutes after. At the moment, there are no questions coming from the audience, although they are still very welcome to send in. And so I was wondering whether the best thing for us to do would be to invite each of the speakers just to make a few closing remarks on the whole question of how can social entrepreneurs bridge the gap need and so why don't we ask you, Victor, since you've been so valiant in supporting me in this particular role, why don't you jump in first to make a few finishing remarks?
Yes, thank you, Chris. And it's okay. I mean, we're all here together. So in our case, or in my case, how we are closing that gap is being as close as possible to our users, eliminating as many barriers as possible. And I think that we have been doing that in the last years. And definitely, as you mentioned it, and all in a way we mention it, is to keep going and finding the strength by serving others. And I think that's how we and my team have been able to keep doing it. And we are really excited about the future. I think that we have changed lives, and that's something that it's always resonated in what we do every day. So I think that we have to work.
Thank you very much. Peter, just a couple of finishing remarks, not too long, please, from you.
Yeah, I must first of all acknowledge and pay respect to you, Chris, for your foresight and bringing into being Basic Needs, which has made a lot of impact on people across the world, particularly in Ghana, where I work. I cut my teeth in mental health from you and from working with Basic Needs. And Basic Needs has remained a very unique, innovative, and impactful organization that has helped many people and collaborated with government. we'll continue to share. Thank you.
That's very kind of you. I hadn't really invited I hadn't intended to invite such a kind set of remarks, but that's great. Thank you. Daniel, you're on mute at the moment. Daniel, you're on mute. Can you come off mute?
Daniel, can you hear me? You
can
were
you
muted.
Mute?
Or Peter, can you say, Daniel, that he added his? Go ahead again.
Hello, Daniel. If you can hear me, they're asking for your closing remarks, very brief closing remarks, as we are running out of time.
Okay, let me just try.
Oh, yeah. So I was saying that social entrepreneurs see a gap, and we wriggle as fast as possible through the gap. And there's lots of stuff that gets thrown at us, but we know we need to get to the other side, and we kind of do whatever it takes.
Thank you very much. Well, I wanted to thank all of you for an incredibly interesting seminar held under some quite complex conditions.